Daniel Fisher had everything except a cure for his daughter's paralysis. So when a barefoot boy appeared at his mansion gate whispering, "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again," he let him in. For a moment, it felt like magic was real. Bella smiled, stood, even danced. But then Daniel searched the boy's name and uncovered a tragic link to a crime he buried years ago. Now the miracle carries a price, and the boy's presence threatens to destroy everything Daniel built. Want to know what happened? Watch until the end, and don't miss this story full of emotions and unexpected twists. Also, tell us which city you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories like this one. The chrysanthemums in the garden shivered under the cold October wind as Daniel Fisher, wrapped in his flawless cashmere coat, pushed his daughter's wheelchair toward the vast windows of the conservatory. Bella's small frame seemed to disappear into the plush cushions, her once vibrant eyes now distant, staring out at the rain-soaked main landscape where the wet lawn mirrored the grey sky. "Look, sweetheart," Daniel said, his voice carrying the forced cheerfulness he had mastered over the past year. "The gardeners planted those yellow ones you like." Bella merely nodded, her thin fingers playing with the red ribbon that always tied back her chestnut hair. At 12 years old, she had once been a whirlwind of energy and music, dancing across the marble floors of their mansion, filling every room with laughter. Now, silence hung thick, too thick for a morning that should have smelled like cereal and children's giggles. The accident had changed everything. That rainy night on I-95, when their minivan had hydroplaned and flipped 3 times, had stolen Bella's ability to walk and had stolen Daniel's wife, Margaret. The doctors had pronounced Margaret dead at the scene, while Bella had survived with a severe spinal injury that left her paralyzed from the waist down. "Dad," Bella whispered, interrupting his thoughts, "can we go to the music room today?" Daniel's heart clenched. The music room was Margaret's domain, filled with instruments his wife had collected from around the world. Bella had inherited her mother's talent, especially for the piano. Now those keys remained untouched, gathering dust like the memories they both tried to preserve. "Of course, Princess," he replied, wheeling her back inside. As they passed through the grand hallway lined with portraits of Fisher ancestors, Daniel caught his reflection in one of the antique mirrors. At 55, his dark hair was now streaked with silver, and lines of worry had etched themselves permanently around his eyes. Fisher Automotive had made him one of the wealthiest men in the Northeast, but all that money had proven useless in the face of tragedy. The specialists in Boston, the clinics in Houston, even the promising experimental treatments in Palo Alto, they had all promised miracles and delivered only bills. Not that the cost mattered to Daniel. He would have given his entire fortune to see Bella walk again, to hear her laugh without restraint. In the music room, Bella stared longingly at the grand piano, its polished surface gleaming in the soft light filtering through stained glass windows. "Would you play for me, Dad?" she asked, knowing full well he couldn't. Music had never been his gift. Daniel sat awkwardly on the bench, plinking out the only melody he knew, a simple lullaby Margaret had taught him. The off-key notes hung in the air like broken promises, and when he turned to look at his daughter, he saw tears sliding down her pale cheeks. "I miss her," Bella said simply. "Me too, Princess," Daniel whispered, abandoning the piano to kneel beside her wheelchair. "Me too." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows of the Fisher mansion like a harbinger of change. Neither father nor daughter knew that tomorrow would bring an unexpected visitor, a boy who would challenge everything they believed about healing, forgiveness, and second chances. Morning arrived with the scent of rain still lingering in the air. Security guards patrolled the perimeter of the Fisher estate, as they did every day, their dark uniforms blending with the mist that clung to the iron gates. Daniel sat in his study reviewing quarterly reports when Mrs. Collins, the housekeeper, who had served the family for 20 years, knocked gently on the door. "Mr. Fisher, there's someone at the gate. A young boy asking to see you," she said, her forehead creased with concern. "Security wanted to send him away, but he's quite insistent." "What does he want?" Daniel asked, not looking up from his papers. "He says," Mrs. Collins hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "He says he can help Bella walk again." Daniel's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "Another con artist? We've had enough miracle workers and faith healers trying to get money from us." Nevertheless, curiosity, or perhaps desperation, led him to the security monitors. On the screen he saw a thin boy, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, with olive skin and dark eyes that seemed too old for his young face. His clothes were worn, but clean. Jeans torn at the knees, a faded t-shirt, and a tattered Red Sox cap clutched tightly in his hands. "Send him away," Daniel ordered, turning back to his desk, but just then Bella wheeled herself into the study. "Who is it, Dad?" she asked, her voice more animated than it had been in months. Daniel hesitated. "No one important, sweetheart." Bella rolled her chair to the monitor and studied the boy's face. Something flickered in her eyes, a spark that Daniel hadn't seen since before the accident. "Let him in," she said softly. "Bella, please, Dad, I want to meet him." The despair in Daniel's heart warred with the hope in his daughter's eyes. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded to Mrs. Collins. 20 minutes later, the boy stood in the grand foyer, his threadbare sneakers a stark contrast against the Italian marble floor. Up close, Daniel noticed a scar running from the boy's left eyebrow to his temple, and calluses on his hands suggesting a life of hard work. "What's your name?" Daniel asked coolly. "Noah, sir," the boy answered, his voice carrying a slight accent. Spanish. Perhaps, but with the unmistakable cadence of someone who had grown up in Boston's working-class neighborhoods. "And what makes you think you can help my daughter?" Before Noah could answer, Bella wheeled herself forward. "How did you know about me?" she asked. Noah's eyes softened as they met Bella's. "I've been having dreams about this house, about a girl who needed help to walk again. I know it sounds crazy, but I've helped others before." Daniel snorted in disbelief, but Bella leaned forward in her wheelchair. "I believe you," she whispered, reaching out her hand to the strange boy who had appeared like an answer to unspoken prayers. "I don't believe in miracles," Daniel declared, crossing his arms as he watched Noah kneel beside Bella's wheelchair in the conservatory. Sunlight filtered through the glass ceiling, creating patterns on the marble floor streaked with golden veins. "It's not exactly a miracle, sir," Noah replied with quiet confidence. "It's understanding how the body remembers." Daniel frowned. "We've consulted the best specialists in the country. Her spinal cord injury—" "May I?" Noah interrupted, gesturing toward Bella's legs. After receiving a nod from Bella, Noah gently placed his hands on her ankles. His touch was respectful, clinical even, belying his youth. "Close your eyes, Bella," he instructed softly. "Imagine warm waves washing over your feet, rising slowly up your legs." Mrs. Collins hovered in the doorway, her weathered hands clutching her apron. The security chief stood nearby, skepticism etched on his face. Yet the entire household seemed to hold its breath. "Now try to move your toes," Noah continued. "Don't worry if nothing happens. Just imagine the movement." To everyone's astonishment, Bella's right big toe twitched slightly. "I felt something," she gasped, eyes flying open. Daniel stepped forward, heart pounding. "Bella!" "Dad, I felt it. It was like electricity, a tingling." Noah pulled a small plastic flute from his pocket, cracked and worn but clearly treasured. "Music helps," he explained, beginning to play a simple, haunting melody. The notes danced through the conservatory, bouncing off glass walls and nestling among the exotic plants. "Try again," he urged between phrases. "Feel the rhythm in your legs." For 30 minutes they continued, Noah playing, Bella concentrating. By the end, she could wiggle not just her toes but rotate her ankles slightly. Tears streamed down her face, tears of joy, of disbelief, of hope renewed. Daniel watched, transfixed, as Noah helped Bella move to the edge of her wheelchair, supporting her as she placed her feet flat on the cool marble. "I can't," she whispered, fear crossing her face. "You can," Noah encouraged. "Just for a second, I won't let you fall." With Noah on one side and Daniel rushing to the other, Bella pushed herself up. For 3 glorious seconds, she stood, wobbly and dependent on their support, but standing. Nonetheless, when she collapsed back into her chair, she was laughing and crying simultaneously. "How did you do that?" Daniel demanded, his voice thick with emotion. Noah shrugged. "I told you, it's about memory. The body remembers, even when connections are broken." That evening, while Bella rested, exhausted but exhilarated, Daniel watched Noah from his study window. The boy sat alone on a stone bench in the garden, shoulders slightly hunched, looking smaller and more vulnerable than he had inside. Daniel reached for the phone. "Jenkins," he said to his security chief, "find out everything you can about this boy. Everything." Jenkins appeared in the study doorway just before midnight, his expression grim. Outside, autumn rain tapped against the windows like hesitant fingers. "You found something?" Daniel asked, looking up from his untouched whiskey. "Yes, sir. The boy's full name is Noah Alvarez. He's been in foster care for 7 years, since age 3 when his parents died." Jenkins placed a thin folder on the mahogany desk. Their names were Mateo and Lucia Alvarez. Daniel's hand froze midway to the folder. Those names, why did they sound familiar? "They were immigrants from Guatemala," Jenkins continued. "Both worked night shifts at a manufacturing plant in South Portland. On their way home one night, Their car was struck by another vehicle. Both died at the scene. Something cold settled in Daniel's stomach. What manufacturing plant? Jenkins cleared his throat. Fisher Automotive, sir. The Portland Assembly Facility. The whiskey glass slipped from Daniel's hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. Memories rushed back. A late-night phone call. His lawyer handling a situation. Papers signed without questions asked. The driver who hit them, Daniel whispered. Was he ever identified? According to police records, the driver fled the scene. The case went cold after a few months. Jenkins hesitated. However, I found a sealed record suggesting that a substantial anonymous donation was made to the Portland Police Benevolent Fund around that time. Shortly after, the investigation was officially closed. Daniel closed his eyes, crushing guilt washing over him. 7 years ago, he had been celebrating the launch of a new luxury model. There had been a dinner, too much champagne, a foggy drive back to his Portland penthouse. A sudden impact, he'd convinced himself, was just a pothole. The next morning, his head of security at the time had shown him newspaper headlines about 2 Fisher employees killed in a hit-and-run. Daniel had panicked, called his lawyer, who took care of everything. Money changing hands, record sealed, a 3-year-old orphan shuffled into the system, and now that child was in his home, helping his daughter walk again. The irony was unbearable. Sir, Jenkins prompted. What would you like me to do about the boy? Daniel stared at the rain streaking down the window, each droplet a tear he'd never allowed himself to shed for the lives he'd destroyed. Nothing, he finally said. Just find out where he's staying, make sure he's safe. After Jenkins left, Daniel opened his laptop and searched Noah's name. He found scattered mentions in local newspapers. A remarkably gifted young boy playing music at community centers. A child who accompanied his foster mother to nursing homes, where he somehow helped elderly patients with movement exercises. No wonder he knew how to help Bella. Despite his tender age, he'd somehow learned to help others despite having lost everything himself. Daniel buried his face in his hands. Tomorrow, Noah would return for another session with Bella. How could he face this 10-year-old boy knowing what he had done? Golden light spilled across the conservatory floor as Noah guided Bella through her exercises the following morning. Dark circles under Daniel's eyes betrayed his sleepless night, but neither child noticed. Absorbed in their work, feel the music move through you, Noah encouraged, playing a gentle melody on his cracked plastic flute. Let it wake up your legs. Bella's toes tapped in rhythm, her face radiant with concentration. After a week of daily sessions, she could now stand for nearly 30 seconds and take small supported steps. You're doing amazing, Noah exclaimed, when she completed 5 wobbly steps between her wheelchair and the potted palm. His childish enthusiasm was infectious, his small face lighting up with genuine joy at her progress. Mrs. Collins watched from the doorway, dabbing at her eyes with her apron. It's a miracle, she whispered to Daniel. God brought that boy here. Daniel merely nodded, unable to voice the storm of emotions in his chest. Every smile from Noah was a knife of guilt twisting deeper. When the session ended, Noah carefully helped Bella back into her wheelchair, his small hands steady and sure. Noah, Daniel said suddenly, would you join us for lunch today? The boy hesitated, glancing at his worn-out sneakers and faded jeans. I don't want to be any trouble, sir. No trouble at all, Daniel assured him. I'd like to get to know you better. At the table, Noah sat stiffly, eyes wide at the formal place settings. He watched Bella before selecting the correct fork, his table manners surprisingly refined for a child who had spent most of his life in foster care. Your parents, Daniel began carefully. What do you remember about them? Noah's smile dimmed. Not much, sir. I was very little when they died, but my foster mum kept a picture of them. He pulled a tattered photograph from his pocket. A handsome couple, the woman's smile identical to Noah's. They were kind, he continued, and they loved music. My mom sang while my dad played guitar. That's what my foster mom told me. Daniel's hand trembled as he took a sip of water. And how did you learn to help people walk? Noah shrugged. I just always knew how. My foster mom says I have healing hands. He looked down at his small fingers. I started helping Mrs. Martinez at the nursing home when I was 6. She had a stroke, and the doctors said she'd never walk again. But she did. Noah helped lots of people, Bella chimed in, having researched him online. There was a newspaper article about him helping a veteran with spinal injuries. Daniel nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Here was this extraordinary child, whose life he had shattered, now bringing healing to his family, a family that had everything while Noah had nothing. The true weight of what he had, done 7 years ago, pressed down on him like a physical force. He had to make it right, somehow. That evening, just as Noah was preparing to leave, Daniel's corporate lawyer arrived unannounced. Richard Hargrove had handled Fisher Automotive's legal affairs for 20 years, including the cover-up of the accident that had killed Noah's parents. "We need to talk," Richard said tersely, glancing suspiciously at the small boy gathering his belongings. Privately. In the study, Richard paced the Persian rug, agitation evident in every movement. "What were you thinking bringing that boy here? Do you have any idea of the liability? If anyone connects the dots?" "Lower your voice," Daniel hissed. "He's just a child who could destroy everything you've built," Richard countered. "I've been getting calls from the board. Rumors are circulating that you've taken in some miracle worker kid. People are asking questions. He's helping Bella. She took 5 steps today." Richard snorted. "Physical therapy could do the same thing. This isn't about your daughter. It's about risk management." He pulled out papers from his briefcase. "I've arranged for the boy to be placed in a boarding school in Vermont. All expenses paid. Far away from here." Disgust rose in Daniel's throat. "So we abandon him again? Like we did when his parents died?" "We?" Richard's eyebrows shot up. "There is no we in this, Daniel. You were behind the wheel that night. I just cleaned up your mess." The door creaked. Both men turned to find Noah standing in the doorway, his face pale, eyes wide with dawning comprehension. "You," the boy whispered, looking at Daniel. "You killed my parents?" The words hung in the air like shattered glass. Daniel stepped forward. "Noah!" The boy backed away, bumping into Bella, who had wheeled herself into the hallway, drawn by the raised voices. "Dad?" she asked, confusion in her eyes. "What's happening?" Noah turned to her, tears streaming down his face. "Your dad killed my parents. He hit their car and ran away. He's why I don't have a family." "That's enough," Richard snapped. "Son, you clearly misunderstood." "No," Daniel interrupted, his voice breaking. "No more lies." He knelt before Noah, eye to eye with the trembling child. "You deserve the truth. 7 years ago, I was driving home after a company party. I'd had too much to drink. I hit a car and panicked. I didn't stop." Bella gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "I didn't know until yesterday that it was your parents," Daniel continued, tears now flowing freely. "When I found out who you were, what I'd done to you." His voice failed him. Noah stood frozen, his small chest heaving with emotion. The plastic flute slipped from his fingers, clattering on the hardwood floor. Richard stepped forward. "Daniel, stop talking immediately. This is the right thing to do," Daniel finished, never taking his eyes off Noah's face. "I'm so sorry. I can't bring your parents back, but I swear to you I will make this right." Silence engulfed the hallway as Noah stared at Daniel, his young face a battlefield of emotions. Without a word, he turned and ran, footsteps echoing through the mansion, until the front door slammed shut. "Noah!" Bella cried, attempting to wheel after him, but her chair caught on the ornate rug. Daniel rose shakily to his feet. "I'll find him. Let him go," Richard advised, already on his phone. "I'll have security. Put that away," Daniel ordered, his voice suddenly steel. "You've done enough damage, we both have." Outside, rain had begun to fall again, turning the estate grounds into a misty wonderland of shadows. Daniel searched frantically, calling Noah's name into the darkness. He found the boy huddled beneath an ancient oak tree near the garden wall, soaked and shivering. "Go away," Noah sobbed when Daniel approached. "I can't," Daniel answered softly, removing his jacket and draping it around the boy's trembling shoulders. "Not again." They sat in silence, rain pattering on the leaves above them. Finally, Noah spoke, his voice small but steady. "My foster mom says forgiveness isn't for the person who did wrong, it's for the person carrying the hurt." Daniel bowed his head. "She sounds very wise." "She is," Noah agreed. "She also says that when bad things happen, sometimes good can come from them." He looked toward the house, where Bella's silhouette was visible in the window, like me helping. "Bella, I don't deserve your forgiveness," Daniel whispered. Noah wiped his tears with the back of his hand. "I don't think forgiveness is about deserving. It's about choosing." From the mouth of a child, wisdom that cut through decades of corporate calculation and moral compromise, Daniel felt something crack inside him, like ice breaking on a frozen river. "What can I do, Noah? Tell me, and I'll do it," the boy considered. This with a seriousness beyond his years. "You can't bring my parents back, but you could help other kids like me, kids who lost their parents." Back at the house, Bella was waiting anxiously in the foyer, her worried eyes scanning both their rain-soaked figures. When Noah hesitantly approached her wheelchair, she reached for his hand. "I'm so sorry about your parents," she whispered. "I'm sorry about your mum too," he replied. Daniel watched as his daughter and this extraordinary boy, victims of different tragedies, now connected by an invisible thread of healing, held on to each other. In that moment, something shifted in the atmosphere of the old mansion. The weight of secrets lifted, replaced by the clean scent of truth and possibility. That night, Long after Noah had been given dry clothes and a guest room, Daniel sat at his desk writing 2 letters. One to the district attorney, confessing to the hit and run that had killed Mateo and Lucia Alvarez 7 years ago. The second, to his board of directors, outlining his plan to establish a foundation for children orphaned by traffic accidents. Justice would have its cost, but the price of silence had been far greater. 6 months later, the Fisher mansion vibrated with something it hadn't known in years: laughter. Spring sunlight streamed through open windows as Bella, leaning on a decorative cane, took careful steps across the conservatory floor. Noah counted her progress, his eyes bright with encouragement. 98, 99, 100, he cheered as she reached the far wall, collapsing into her father's waiting arms. "You did it, sweetheart," Daniel exclaimed, his face alight with joy and pride. Mrs. Collins bustled in with a tray of lemonade and cookies, followed by Noah's foster mother, Elena Garcia, a warm-faced woman who had raised 17 foster children over 2 decades. Since that rainy night of confession, she had become a regular visitor to the Fisher home, bringing with her the practical wisdom of a woman who understood both loss and healing. "I see," Elena said, squeezing Noah's shoulder. "What did I tell you about those healing hands?" Outside on the freshly mowed lawn, workers were setting up chairs for tomorrow's ceremony, the official launch of the Alvarez Foundation, dedicated to supporting children who had lost parents in traffic accidents and funding innovative rehabilitation programs for spinal cord injuries. Daniel's confession to the authorities had resulted in community service rather than jail time, largely due to his voluntary admission and the extensive restitution programs he had initiated. Fisher Automotive had been transformed as well, becoming an industry leader in both safety technology and corporate responsibility. "Dad," Bella called, "can Noah and I show Elena the music room? We've been practicing a duet," as the children led. Eleanor away, Daniel sank into a wicker chair, allowing himself a moment of quiet reflection. The past months had not been easy. There had been scandal, outrage, and painful restructuring of both his company and his life. Yet through it all, something remarkable had emerged. Truth had not destroyed them, but had instead cleared the way for genuine healing. His gaze wandered to a framed photograph now prominently displayed on the conservatory wall. Mateo and Lucia Alvarez on their wedding day, their smiles radiant with hope and love. Beside it hung a more recent picture, Noah and Bella at the piano, her hands positioned to play while he guided her posture, both laughing at some shared joke. From the music room came the sound of Bella's hesitant piano notes, accompanied by Noah's flute, no longer the cracked plastic one, but a handcrafted wooden instrument that Daniel had commissioned from a master craftsman. The melody was simple but haunting, weaving together strands of both sorrow and hope. Daniel closed his eyes, remembering Noah's words that rainy night. "Forgiveness isn't for the person who did wrong. It's for the person carrying the hurt." The Yao boy's wisdom had changed everything. Tomorrow, when he stood before cameras and community leaders to launch the foundation, Daniel would not present himself as a hero or philanthropist. He would stand as a man humbled by the capacity for forgiveness in a child's heart and transformed by the extraordinary grace that had entered his broken home through the most unexpected doorway. A small boy who had simply said, "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again."